This is the Code Deploy Go Live podcast,
Episode 3
with Julie Turner and Andrew Connell. And this episode is available as a video on our YouTube channel, linked in the show notes. Today, Julie and I are going to talk about the recent Microsoft 365 developer program / developer tenant announcement about the future updates that we can expect. We finally got that public statement that we've been waiting over a year for from Microsoft. And finally, we have this update. Julie and I are going to give you our hot takes on it as well. Recorded live April 24th, 2025. Julie, how are you today?
Hey, Andrew. Doing good. Another day, another podcast. I'm loving it. Here we go. Number two.
Anything, what's new in your world today?
Well, I'm fighting with adaptive card extensions today. Having fun with that. Reverse engineering some stuff. Checking some stuff out in the deep depths. Doing some HTML in there. Making React work inside of my aces. So yeah, having some fun there. You know, normal, everyday day in the life of a developer. Fighting with my fellow Simpraxians over whether Macs or PCs are better. We did that, a little banter today. So yeah, we're having lots of fun.
So you didn't want me involved in that conversation, I guess.
I did not, no, because you would have sided with the Mac people and then we would have been unbalanced and it would have been horrible. How about you?
Who needs to be fair and balanced? Hey, I hope you get the joke. I am in mourning because yesterday I was teaching a class. Put this on LinkedIn and on Facebook or whatever socials. When I was teaching a class yesterday, I'm a Lego guy. I don't know if you can tell.
Shocking.
I have stuff that's out of camera, so stuff that's above me and then stuff that's also out of camera of like the Lego architecture stuff. And I had a shelf that had the White House in Washington, D.C. and the U.S. Capitol building on a shelf. And I was in the middle of teaching, and all of a sudden I started to hear this slide, and it's the shelf against the wall. The top bracket kind of got loose and pulled out of the wall, but the bottom bracket stayed, and it just slid down, fell down. And I am still looking at a pile of the White House and the U.S. Capitol building over here in absolute pieces on the floor. And I will tell you, it was incredibly hard. I do my best to not talk about politics during work or with customers. I was in the middle of teaching a class. So there's a video of it happening, or like you don't see it happen, but you see me get scared and like, oh my God. And then hand in hands. And all I could think about was I'm looking at this and I'm like, if that's not a perfect representation to some people in this country about what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, I'm just like, I just sat there looking at it. I just looked at my class and I said something. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I'm actually having a good time. I did. Last week. This is interesting because we're recording a couple episodes before we actually go live with our podcast.
Right,
so it's like we're going live in the future, and people are listening to this going, they're talking about news that happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. We are. Excuse me. Battling a cough. But anyway, last week I migrated the entire company from one platform to another one and still dealing with some support stuff. But it's been like the new experience is so much better from my point of view, but also for like the student engagement. So I'm having an absolute blast with it. Really, really happy with how everything is coming out.
Great. That's awesome. That's so good. I mean, I got in right away when you sent the notices out, and it looks really, really, really nice. I can see why you wanted to do an overhaul of it. It's super, super crisp and professional, and I like having everything all in one thing instead of the distributed system. So I think that's really cool. I'm excited for you. Big deal.
Thank you.
Very big deal.
I wish I could take a lot of credit for that side of the stuff you just mentioned, but it's a hosted app. It's a hosted SaaS, so it's like I can't control any of the UX with it. That makes it kind of nice that I can't do like theming or anything with it. So kind of living in the SharePoint Online days today.
Yeah.
It's a great platform. We switched from Kajabi over to Circle, and so nice. But that's not what we're covering today.
No.
Today is our first real episode for like content-based content episode where we're going to talk about the big announcement from Microsoft yesterday that we've been waiting for a long time about on the Microsoft 365 Dev Tenants. But before we do that, we want to start with a segment that we did not do in our first episode. That was just an announcement. We want to start with a segment where we talk a little bit about some of the latest news and stuff. Just for our listeners, we're intentionally going a little light on some of the news until we start doing more shows that we record that are going to be published like very soon after we've recorded them. We know that we don't plan on recording or publishing these until we have a batch of a few episodes that we're going to publish all at once. So we're intentionally going a little light on the links in the news. But we want to at least get you kind of a feel for like how we're handling this and stuff. And like Microsoft Cloud Show, old school listeners, you guys probably are going to be familiar with how CJ and I used to do this. And it's a feature that I think a lot of people would like because on the table, I don't know if I told you this, Julie, one of the reasons I like doing the news is because some people tune in just to get the news and then they tune out if they don't care what the big thing is that we're talking about today.
I can see that. I totally could see that. I may have done that.
Really?
Number 2.
That's okay. After 450
you still
episodes,
love me.
After 450 episodes, CJ and I both claim we've only listened to about 2 or 3 of those episodes when they were published.
Yeah, I hear that.
At any rate.
I hear that.
Awesome. So would you like to kick us off today?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I have published these as I found them on LinkedIn. So they're not super timely, but they're things that I've found out recently. So I want to share them over. The first one is around site selected. So we knew that site selected in SharePoint was a thing where we could essentially add for an Azure app registration or a managed identity. We could say that one of the permissions it had was site selected, and then we could, using a bunch of different methods, grant which sites the app would have access to. So that was great and awesome. And that is on the v1.0 endpoint for the graph. But what I wasn't aware of had released, I had heard it was coming, but I wasn't aware it was released, is that you can do not only site selected, you can do lists selected, you can do list items selected, and you can do files selected. So those other 3 are on the beta endpoint of the graph. And so that allows you to say, oh, okay, I have an app registration and I only want that app registration to have access to this one list or this set of list items or this small set of files or one file even for that matter. So knowing that, super, super powerful, especially if you're doing extensibility with a third party that, you probably trust at some level, but they're still outside of your organization, or you're building some external app that, you just want that extra layer of security to know that it's secure and they're only accessing the subset of things that you want them to access versus sort of the way it's been, which is, sites, full control all or whatever, read write all even. So I think that's just a big thing to point out to people in case they didn't hear it, because it definitely came out in the docs that we're going to link in the show notes, but it isn't something that was talked about broadly as far as like a conference or anything like that. Nobody announced it. So when I heard about it, I was like, wait, this is real? And I know the person who is in charge of that, and I'm literally messaging him. I'm like, is this really real? Like real, or just sort of real? And he's like, nope, super real. I'm like, awesome.
It was funny to me too. I watched that discussion going back and forth where I saw he's like, yeah, we definitely documented this. And then you provided the link and he's like, I swear I documented this and it's like I never click save or publish on it. He's like, that is not supposed to be like that. It was a trip. I was an absolute trip. So it was an honest mistake, but it was like.
You're actually talking about the next one that I have, which is. Yeah, no, that's okay. You're talking about, that's okay.
Well,
let's segue right into it. Let's segue. So, one of the things I've been ranting about literally for 5, 6, maybe more years, I can't even remember how long ago, was that there was no hook on sites created, sites deleted. You weren't able to register a webhook on that. So you could do it for list items, but you couldn't do it for sites. And I ranted about it and so this is the chat you're talking about. I made a side comment in one of the chats, and a person who was in charge of those APIs was like, I demoed this in 2020. I was like, wait, what? Ignite in 2020. I'm like, no way. And then he pointed me to some docs, and it's literally 2 sentences in the docs that are around best practices for discovering files and detecting changes at scale. There's 2 sentences that mention that there's a /sites subscription. And then it points to in the graph documentation where there's subscriptions. But if you go look at that list, which shows all the things you can get subscriptions to, it's not in there. So that's what you were talking about, where he's like, really? It's supposed to be in there. I thought I did it. Maybe it didn't get published. So, hopefully that will get remedied. But yes, there is a sites subscription that you can subscribe to that will tell you when new sites are created and or deleted. So that is just a lovely new thing that we have, and something I'm probably going to start using in the future. And I've actually talked to some, people who build large platforms that rely on that kind of stuff, and the little tricks that they're doing, which I don't want to actually even say out loud because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. The tricks they were using to do this, because they didn't know this existed either, it's just one of those things where it's like, thank God. Thank God we have it. And hopefully we can reach some people and let them know that this is a real thing, because that's a bummer.
Man, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. That's I saw when you posted it. I saw you talking about it in a forum that we're both in. I was like, I didn't know you could do that either. That's something that would definitely be beneficial. So
exactly.
I have something like that. Maybe next time we'll talk about it for the next episode. But I'm still trying to confirm with Microsoft on something that's kind of one of those, like, if you guys made a change and you didn't announce it, then I think you've got 3 bugs. But if you didn't make a change, then you definitely have 2 bugs, because stuff's not working the way that it's not working the way it's supposed to work. And it was absolutely hilarious, because the guy in the issue list came back really, really fast, and he's like, whoa, we will definitely research this and get back to you. And he got back to me. He's like, here's what we said. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. Can you clarify this, that this is actually intended to work like this? Because if it works like this,
yeah.
And I'm not going to say what it is, because I need to make sure I know what I'm
giving
talking
away
about.
The whole thing.
What's that?
You're going to give away the whole thing. You can't keep going.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so, you're right. All right. Okay. The other news that we have is it's our feature. It's our feature. So why don't we just transition into the feature?
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay. So today, what you and I are going to talk about is about the update that Microsoft provided on April the 23rd about they called it the Microsoft 365 developer program, but this is really specific to like what everybody calls the dev tenants. So I want to first kind of frame a term, and I will add another term in a few minutes, but I want to first frame a term and get people caught up on understanding like what happened, where we are, and all that stuff. So the term that I want to refer to is legacy dev tenants. And when I mean legacy dev tenant, I mean any tenant that you've created as part of the developer program with Microsoft 365. I want to refer to those, or the ones that you've gotten through one of the other available programs since the thing has been frozen. So basically, if you have a developer tenant you got it from the dev program and you got it today or before today, that's legacy dev tenant. All right. We'll talk about something else in a minute called future dev tenant. So I'm going to try and keep both of those separate so you can keep track of which one's which. Because, I mean, even you and I were on a call with Microsoft and this was being discussed, and I was having to do everything with like my hands. I was like, this isn't going to work for our podcast, because some people might just be listening to this in the car and they're like, and then if I try and say like right hand, left hand, and you're watching the video, I'm going to get confused too, because we're mirrored and all that crap. So
I still don't even know if I'm 100% solid on what is actually going on. So hopefully we can work it all out today.
Awesome. Well, that would actually even be that would be perfect too, because then you can ask questions if you're confused, because I think I've got it. I have some clarifying questions that I've asked Microsoft since they published the article, because I think that, well, I'll get to that, but that's what we're going to talk about. So here's what I want to do. I thought about, we talk about this in a couple different ways. So those of you who are listening or watching the show, you know what to expect. I'm going to start with a little bit of a history, and I'm going to do this really fast because I've got some references that I will point to that also go into a little bit more depth, but I want to give you a little bit of context on what, why, when, and then what's happened recently. Then we're going to cover what is the announcement that Microsoft made and what are the key points that they pulled out from that announcement. There's a little bit more that we can add to the announcement that I do know is fact from our conversations with Microsoft. I know that I'm not disclosing anything that's under NDA, that everything is public, because I've actually put a YouTube video out about this, an article, and Microsoft has come back and said, really good way that you added the extra color like that. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm not in trouble, until someone comes back and says, hey, we're going to rip your NDA away. And I'm going to be like, that guy said it was fine. So we'll do that first and talk about some of the key points of that announcement. And then you and I start adding our thoughts to this and what our opinions are and everything. And then at the very end, it's, well, if I want to have a dev tenant today, what are my options? And I want to make sure that people have I want to make sure that people know what their options are. And you and I can kind of go back and forth on that one a little bit too. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. So what are we talking about? The Microsoft 365 developer program, it came out, I believe, it was around, and then they added the ability to get what they called a free developer tenant. It was also referred to as an instant sandbox. But effectively what this was that if you create an account with a dev program, which you could do with just needing an email address, you could do it for free. You could then get a developer tenant that you could get it for free. And you got a handful of like E3 or E5 licenses, depending on when you got it. And you could use that for development purposes. And as long as you were using it for development purposes, it normally would expire in 90 days. But Microsoft changed that to where if you were using it for dev reasons, then they would automatically just renew you. So as long as you're not doing something like sending out commercial email and you were like deploying stuff to an app catalog or something like that, they'd be like, yeah, you're good. Otherwise, they just throw it away. But they were free. But then in January of 2024, Microsoft got hacked. It's referred to as the Midnight Blizzard attack by a Russian state actor group called Nobelium. The skinny on that was they found a way. They basically said, well, hey, all you need is an email address to get these dev tenants. Cool. We will create a bot or lots of bots that will go create thousands or tens of thousands of these dev tenants. And then we will use all the licensed users that are inside those dev tenants to send out billions of bad emails, and also use this as a way to get a backdoor into Microsoft's network where they also are able to get to Microsoft's email. Now, it only happened for a very short amount of time. Microsoft caught it. They shut it down pretty quick, but the damage was done. And the fallout from that was in late January of 2024, early February 2024, they shut down or locked down. I'm going to refer to it as a lockdown. They locked down the people getting new dev tenants. So they got rid of all those ones that were bad. If you already had one, like I have one, I think you have one too, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they still work just fine. But the one, nobody else could go get one very easily. The way we could before. All you need was just an email address. The big reason for that too is they needed a way to be able to validate the identity of the person that was getting it. So if it was somebody that was getting it and they were doing it for bad purposes, they'd have a way to go back to that person and run charges or something like that. There are a few other options of ways you can get a dev tenant today and that they supported, and they were all part of, I believe it's called the Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program, or you were part of like a TAP ISV program. So that was the only people that were able to get it, because they already had their identities validated with Microsoft, and they'd have to get it through those different programs. At the time when Microsoft published the announcement about this, they said effectively, they didn't say it explicitly like this, but they effectively said that you can expect more on this in September 2024. So they set the expectation that this was a temporary lockdown. September rolled around in 2024, nothing happened. no news. Even the person that wrote the blog post is no longer with the company, so you can't really track back to that person. And it was just, when you asked Microsoft, it was met with silence. In August of that year, I asked a question to somebody at Microsoft when they were at an AMA at a conference that you and I were, I think you were at there as well, in Washington, D.C. And she said, expect end of the year, beginning of the year. And that came and went with nothing. So it was essentially Microsoft developers were just like, what are we supposed to do? Like, do we have to buy a tenant? And there was no idea of, is something coming? Are you working on it? Just complete silence. So I took it upon myself, like, to just ask Microsoft, or sorry, I took it upon myself to put an article out early March of 2025 that said, you know what? My motivation was, let's see if we can entice a response. Let's see if I can get a bunch of other people to share their stories about how this is hurting them as developers, be them ISVs, training companies, corporate developers, independents, students, you name it. And so I pitched my idea of a paid developer program where you had paid tenants with like low quotas.
Yeah, I thought that was super well thought out. Like that, like when I read that blog post, I was like, and I said to my partner Mark and some other people that I know, I was like, this is so well thought out. I mean, at the very least, this should spur some thought and some reaction and whatever. And I think you did. I think you saw a lot of reaction, and so good on you for thinking through it at that level. I was like I was like, wow, this is so well thought out. So
I appreciate that. The point was to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I didn't want to just keep complaining.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So we did. So I got a bunch of reactions. I took the reactions to Microsoft. You and I were at the MVP summit. Actually, we were sitting next to each other when I did this.
Yes.
And we had an opportunity to ask a question in a theater. I don't know, maybe a couple hundred people in there. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it holds a bunch, but I don't know.
Yeah, probably about 100 anyway. Yeah.
Okay, 100. And there was an AMA aspect to what we were doing. And so my hand shot up. I had it all written out. I asked the question. I can't share the details of it because it was all like an NDA event. So I can just tell you that I walked out of there pleased with the person that responded and the commitment that was made. So I was appreciative of it. I'm not saying that I'm the one that got Microsoft to make this change. So that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a history on where things are. Regardless, yesterday, Microsoft announced an update to the program, or the title is Exciting Updates Coming to the Microsoft 365 Developer Program. So we'll have links to all this stuff in the show notes. Their article that was published on April the 23rd, 2025 was
an announcement of an announcement.
Sorry,
an announcement of an announcement.
It kind of is. It's kind of like that. It did tell us a little bit.
It did. It did.
There are a few. So the key points to this announcement that I picked up on were, number one, nothing's changing right now. All right. So there's nothing new. This is the only thing we got was news and information. So nothing's changing right now. There will be a new tenant offering for developers. I'm going to call that, for the sake of our discussion here, future dev tenants. And there is also, and there will be some sort of a commercial offering. Now, it doesn't explicitly say this in the article, but I have every expectation that these are going to cost something. So I know my proposal said that, but I have every expectation that's going to happen. And I've got some reasons why I think that's important. We also found out there is no migration path to take a legacy tenant to a future dev tenant. So if you want to do that, that's called a migration. And we all love migrations. So better call Orchestry or ShareGate or something like that. Yeah, well,
ShareGate in this case, although even that can't fully, we've been having discussions about it. There's pieces of what you might do in a dev tenant that won't be easily migrated. So it's, you're going to have to do some work.
So there's that. So other stuff too that I think was there, and I'll talk about. Actually, we'll do the thoughts. I'll do my thoughts in that in a minute. The other things that were important with this is that there is an opportunity for us to take a dev tenant, one of these future dev tenants, not a legacy one, And if you decide that, hey, I want this to be like a real tenant and buy like some E5s and have my company use it, kind of like upsize it, then that will be an option because it will support add-on based licensing. So I could add on Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses as well to these new dev tenants because it's also a paid commercial offering, or pretty much what they said. It says support for commercial add-ons. And there's more stuff to it as well. So the biggest benefit I see to this is that, those two benefits are being able to add real licenses to it and add add-on licenses to it. So any thoughts on that before we keep moving?
Yes, I have thoughts, obviously. I never don't have something to say, right? My only thought is that I'm in agreement,
I wanted
right?
to do this podcast with you, Julie. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but if you never had any thoughts to share with this stuff, this is going to be a boring episode. And that was a really bad
I don't have disagreements. So yeah, no, I'm totally on board. And I think, there could be so many arguments here and I don't want to go either way, but the idea that you can have a dev tenant that you can then decide that because of whatever work that you're doing, you need to add on some licenses so that you can try out or work with some piece that wasn't there. That was a huge limitation of the dev tenants before. So, this idea that we can add what we need to add to test things out, huge. I think that's great. So I'm all on board.
So the next thing I want to talk about was thoughts. So our opinions on this whole program and stuff. I have some thoughts. I have two wishes that I hope they do, and I don't think that these are like pie in the sky things, but it's been a little bit of my feedback on it. And I have some open questions. So the big thing for me on why I think that this is a big deal and why I think that it makes it to where the fact that it's a commercial offering, I get it. Everybody wants stuff for free. I get that you don't want to sit there and have to pay for this kind of stuff. But look, I'm going to be completely candid with this. I would love to get it for free as well. And I get that people like Salesforce, they have a free developer option. And there's other companies that do it as well. Azure, AWS, they have the ability to spin up like a subscription and get like credits that you can apply or that you can burn that they give you for free. I get it. I get all that kind of stuff. I get there's other companies that do make you pay for a dev program, like Apple. You have to have a developer program account for, I think, $100 a year to be able to publish apps to the App Store. I get it. I totally get it. But on the Microsoft side, I think this is a big deal, especially right now, acutely special right now. Now, this, I want to be very, very clear. Nobody at Microsoft that has told me anything about this or that has alluded to this or given me any kind of like a whiff that this was a reason. Microsoft has spent hundreds of billions of dollars on AI, from investing in data centers to buying, crap tons of those NVIDIA cards, to the money they spent on backing OpenAI and other AI companies, to investing all the company across the board, investing in like Copilot, and frankly, looking everywhere across Microsoft. And if you're not working on AI, I would feel pretty scared about my future at Microsoft if I wasn't doing that based on like what we've seen. Or at least I would be apprehensive about my job security. I should say that.
Yeah.
With all this money that's being spent, a friend of mine shared this with me, and this theory makes sense. For years, Microsoft has had a ridiculous margin selling Office and Windows. The incremental cost for selling Windows was like a penny. So the margins were ridiculous. But with all that AI-based hardware that Microsoft is buying and they're burning left and right, in 2 years, all that stuff is garbage because we'll have brand new NVIDIA cards or some other company coming up with something that's going to be wanting to use those things. You have a newer tech that we need to use to keep up with it. So they're going to be spending it again. And so what that means is that Microsoft has to prove to Wall Street, because shareholders want to see those quarterly reports and see growth. Mm-hmm. And when the margins are way down, you got to fix the issues somewhere else. So what do you see them do? They cut costs. And what's one of the biggest ways to cut costs? Headcount.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you see a lot of people, you've seen in the news, like a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. I mean, it's across the whole tech industry, but we see it at Microsoft as well. It's a way to be able to keep the profitability where it is. So I may be completely making this whole thing up. And the whole reason they're letting people go, I may be completely making this up. But you can make an argument that if you worked at Microsoft and you would not be willing to take over a program that had a high expense to it, that has nothing to do with AI, and basically stick your head up for an opportunity to cut a cost. And so is that a reason behind this? I don't know. Could be just coincidence. Could be just something I'm making up out of the blue. I am making it up, but I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that's going on. The fact that it is a commercial offering means it takes a cost center out of something on Microsoft's side, like the Office Dev group or Microsoft 365 Dev group or anybody on like the Microsoft 365 side, and it shifts the cost onto us as customers instead of them. I don't mind that. We don't know how much it's going to cost. If it's going to cost something and we don't know how much it's going to cost, those two things we don't know. It smells like it's definitely going to cost something, and there's a commercial side to it. But to me, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I'm okay with it too. And I think the benefits might outweigh the icky maybe that you could say you might feel over that thought if it were true. I mean, the idea that the tenant would be a real tenant and could be saved by the developer makes me all in immediately, right? This idea that these dev tenants can could just be pulled out from under you. If you're a developer like I am, or, other people are, I put a lot of stuff in my dev tenant. I'm constantly working on things, prototyping things, building things out. I have things in there that are ideas and works in progress that to lose them all on somebody else's whim in a second really isn't fun. But the upside of the dev tenants were that you would have multiple users. And if you want to do any kind of like scenario testing, you can't just have one user. So I kind of needed the dev tenant sort of paradigm experience, but I wanted the escape hatch, for lack of a better way to say it, of a commercial tenant where I could say, no, you can't take that away. I'm buying it, right? Like I'm going to keep this. And maybe I would drop some of my users or whatever, but at least I wouldn't lose all of that work, all of the things I had set up. So, I'm on board. I'm on board. I think the idea that they'd be standard commercial tenants with maybe some special features, we haven't sort of talked about that yet, but I'm on board.
So that's basically how I feel about it too, right? So there's a lot of stuff we don't know, which
Right.
I have my two specific questions when I saw the news of this come out, that I share with Microsoft, with the two people at Microsoft that I think are our point of contacts here.
Yeah.
Are there going to be quotas associated with this? That was my idea, but I'm just like, so, but that goes on to the next question that I have, which is, what makes this a dev tenant for me just buying a regular commercial license or a few and calling it and treating it like my dev tenant? Like, what does this matter? Like, why do I care?
Yeah.
And I don't know. And that's unclear. I actually kind of like when somebody asked me at Microsoft, not somebody, like the guy asked me at Microsoft, what do you think about the article that came out? And I was like, it's light on detail, but I actually like that because I want you guys to see the reaction that everybody has and the questions that are coming up.
Right.
Because that's going to give you an opportunity to come back and have another article that explains more stuff and have more detail. And hopefully we can have the conversation keep going. I forgot one very important thing. They did make a commitment in that article that you can expect, like their target is September 2025. So yes, that's a few months off, but we don't want this to be like an announcement for an announcement that's coming in 4 or 5 months. I hope this is an announcement that starts a more consistent cadence of a conversation or more stuff, more as we learn more stuff and where things are going to go.
Yeah, that would be good.
My big wishes with this, though, that I'm hoping for is like, give me a reason why this is a dev tenant. I want a way to load content packs. So like, give me a ton of content for like 15 users so that I have like real data that I can access and graph, or give me like a reset option so that if my tenant is like it's empty, I would love to have a way to hit a button to say, add this content, and then another button to basically say, go back to the original state. Is there an easy way to do that? Or am I going to have to like delete the tenant and recreate a new one? I mean,
I think there's a whole paradigm of people who use dev tenants for training, which you are one of. And I think there's more than just that. I mean, I know from working with Bob German and some other people in the past that, you know, they do a lot of like hands-on labs, and they need tenants with user accounts in them that have a fixed amount of time, but they need to have content in there. They need to have those user accounts, and they want to just be able to spin it up and use it. And I think that's a paradigm that a lot of people need. And so that the idea that we could have like a way to say, hey, I need a short-term dev tenant. I need, 25 users. Here's the class I'm teaching on these dates or whatever. This is how long I need it. Like that would be a really great feature to be able to have. Or I need a demo tenant. I know we have the CDX tenants that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that idea that you can, spin up something for demo purposes or whatever that have the content in it, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, and you mentioned CDX, like that was always like my solution to go back to Microsoft. Like, why can't you just go through and make the CDX a paid program that's not available just to partners? But let me do that. So those of you who don't know what CDX is, I think it stood for like customer experience or something, or customer.
I should know this. It's in my blog. Yeah. I don't remember. Customer development experience, something. I could look it up, but anyway, probably doesn't matter. Anyway,
the customer demo experience.
Demo experience. Okay, there.
So basically, what you did is that you had a way to go in, have this portal, and you could go spin up, or you essentially claimed a tenant, and you could choose what kind of a tenant you wanted, and that the kind meant what licenses were applied, what content was in there, stuff like that. You could either pick, you could have like, I think it was 2 or 3 that were on a 90-day period.
Yeah, I think it was 2 on 90-day and 1 on 1 year, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
So like for years, I had access to that, to CDX. Still not entirely sure how I got it, but I still had access to CDX. And I would go create a new tenant, and I would use that for like all my sessions at a conference. And then I would just go, all right, now blow it away. Let me start it again. Or when I teach a class, I do the same thing, spin it up. Let me use it for a bit. Let me throw it away. So it was absolutely fantastic. So I was like, why don't you just give me a way to pay for that? Like, can I just pay to be part of that program? And if it's $200 a year or $100 a year, I'm like, that would be like super useful, but who knows?
Not to be snarky, but I'm going to be a little bit snarky. How do they even templatize those when we don't have any way to really templatize in Microsoft 365? I don't know. Anyway.
I think it was just a bunch of tenants that were like backed up, and then like they like restored them or something.
Oh, that's a way they could do it. Yeah. All right, fine. But still, we need to be able to template. We need APIs. All right. I'm not going down that road today.
Okay, so that was kind of my thoughts to it. I generally like the announcement. I like the progress. Like I said before, I trust them that they're moving forward in the right direction. I trust them, so I'm good. So right now, that's really all we know. Like, and that is it. Seriously, it is that light of a announcement, other than just like, we heard you, we're doing something about it. And here's a couple little pieces, and then we'll be back. And it's like, sweet, you're talking. Thank you. All right, cool. Wait, what? Where'd you go? I got questions.
My one big still open question, or the one that's nagging me the most, is what are they? Then they haven't announced it yet, so we don't know. But I'm the one that answered the question that I want the most is, what are they going to do with the existing dev tenants? Because of course, as I just alluded to, I have one and it's got a lot of stuff in it. And I already had to move all my stuff once because I had an old E3 dev tenant. And then they were like, nope, that E3 is going away. And through the power of knowing some people, I was salvaged long enough that I got a new dev tenant, and I was able to move my stuff from my E3 tenant to my E5 tenant. And so I have a dev tenant, but man, if that goes away, I don't want to have to move it again.
They haven't said anything about that, right?
Yeah, no, I know they haven't.
I got this question on as a comment on my YouTube video. They were like, well, if it's going to cost something, I'm just going to keep the tenant that I have right now. And I was like, fair. But I would have every expectation that there will be a time that they're going to come and say, those dead tenants are being retired and they're going away by whatever.
Yeah.
And you just got to do it. So they have not said that, but.
Yeah. Well, so at any rate, that's my big, hanging behind me. When am I going to have to do this all over again?
Yeah, that was a fair point. That was a fair point. Right now there is no way to go through into it. They're not going to be able to like take an old tenant and move it to the new tenant, take a legacy tenant and move it to the future tenants. You're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, and I get it, but it's just so much work. And like I was sort of alluding to, you can move a lot of the stuff with ShareGate, but you can't move all of it with ShareGate. And so it's,
yeah, fair.
It's going to be a bummer.
Okay. So the next question that people are going to ask is,
so now what?
Well, I need a tenant today. So what are my options? And so all I can say is I'll give you what I'll share with what I share people, and what I think that you can do, and what your options are. I will then give you my recommendation on what I think which one you should do, based on different scenarios. But just keeping in mind that we know something is changing. We don't know what it is. I can't see the future. So you have to make the best decision with the information that's available to you. So basically, so there's that. So first of all, the first thing you can do is you can try to go get a dev tenant from the free options that are available today. Now it's going to be a legacy tenant, but you can do one of those free options today. And to do that, you're going to have to create one. You have to be a member of a Microsoft AI Cloud. Oh gosh, I wrote it down again. Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program, and that is that involves things like there's a solution partners, and there's ISV partners, and a couple of things. We'll put a link to that list in the show notes, or I'll pull it up in just a minute. That's one of your options. Visual Studio subscriber. You have to be a Visual Studio subscriber to get it as another option. Now, I'm just going to tell you what my experience is, and some people may disagree with this, but I've talked to over 100 developers in the last year who've gone through this experience. When you try to create a dev tenant as part of the Visual Studio subscription program, and there's other ones as well that you have access to, like I just mentioned, some people are successful and some people are not. And I'm teaching a class right now, and somebody was successful and somebody was not. And the challenge is that when you call Microsoft support for the Visual Studio subscriber program, they don't have a clue what you're talking about. And they're like, well, if it's not working, you go talk to the people over in the Microsoft 365 developer program. And unfortunately, 9 of the 10 people that I talk to tell me that phone rings and no one ever picks up. So, I mean, it's free. So I would at least give it it's free as part of something you're already paying for. That's one. And I would tell you, let me finish this and I'll let you
Go.
I'd give it a shot, try and make it work. But if it doesn't work, don't invest too much time in it, because I would look at how much time you're going to spend, how much time you're going to invest in it versus how much you would end up having to pay for it. So I'd be like literally what I have in my notes here is try to get it free. Good luck, but be ready to move on.
I disagree in the sense that if you know a feature is deprecated, why would you want to? It's similar to what I'm saying, that I'm so sad about the fact that I know at some point in the future, my dev tenant is going to go away and I have put work in there and things that I want to remember. Now, if you know you're going to just play around and you don't care to keep any of it and you're happy to throw it away, I guess I agree. But I don't know. I find the place where I do my learning and work, I go back and reference that stuff. Like, hey, I figured this out already. I'd like to go back and look at what I figured out so that I can, reproduce it, improve on it, whatever. And if that's going to go, I wouldn't want to build this free tenant knowing it's going to get deprecated and then I'm going to lose what I have. I'd rather do your next option, which I'll segue into saying, what is your next option, Andrew?
Yeah. Well, okay, so you say you disagree, but I don't think you're really disagreeing, because that's kind of, I'm like, you can give it a shot if you want to,
Yeah,
but
well,
that's not
yeah.
the path that I would go for. I agree with what you said. I personally would say don't do it. I'd say go to the one we're going to talk about now, which is go buy your own tenant. That's what
Yeah.
I would do.
Yeah.
Now, here are
It's
your
not that
options.
expensive. Although, yeah.
It's not expensive. It depends on the kind of work that you're doing. Depends on how expensive it's going to be. And I know that the hard thing is that you're asking somebody to go from paying zero to paying something, or to paying something more than you expected. So yeah, now it looks expensive. I get that. I totally get that, and I'm not discounting that. But I'm going to give you the minimal option, and then you can kind of go from where you would want to go up from there. So for me, what I would do is I would say, here's the bare bones you can get. Get a Microsoft 365 Business Essentials license. You can buy it in one of two ways. You can buy it on a month-to-month commitment, to where I could buy it, use it for 2 months, and then throw it away and cancel my subscription. For that, it costs $7.20 a month, and it gives you a lot of stuff. May not give you everything you need, but it gives you a lot of stuff. Or you can get the same license, but instead of getting it on a month-to-month commitment, you can get it on a 12-month commitment. You pay for it monthly, but the price is going from $7.20 down to $6. So effectively, the second option is that you're going to spend $72 a year for the cost of your dev tenant, all right, or for the cost of your tenant, for the cost of your Business Essentials license. We can just stop right there. Then you have other decisions you have to consider. So one of them is Business Essentials going to give me what I need, or I need more? And that would impact how much more licensing you would need from just your core 365 license. But a lot of things that people are doing today is they're diving into Copilot. And so if I'm going to use this for dev purposes, and I want to be able to use Copilot or be able to dev for Copilot, then what are my options? So with that, you have basically two options that how you can license Copilot and be able to use it. But one of them's got a big asterisk that's not either documented or not well documented, and definitely not well known. So one option you have is to buy the $30 per user per month license, but that has a 12-month commitment. So that is a $360 a year investment. The other option is, so if you do that, if you choose to go that route, then there's really no reason to go with the month-to-month Business Essentials license. Go with the annual commitment. And so your total cost out of pocket for 1 year of being in a Microsoft 365, for having a tenant that you're using for development purposes, not part of the dev program, but it's one that you fully own, is $432 for the entire year. Now, I don't know about you, but I know what my monthly spend is for my internet and my cell phone bill. And I don't spend anything for like the tools that I use, like Visual Studio Code. So to me, I look at it and go, that's pretty fair. I mean, it's more than I was paying before, but that's fair.
Yeah, but okay, I totally agree. And I just want to address sort of the privilege that we have on being able to afford those things. I mean, there are people in socioeconomic situations where that would be, a stretch beyond what they could do. And it is sad that that we don't know if there's going to be a program to support those people who are in education, trying to start out, wanting to get ahead. We want them to have options too. And so these numbers are way too big for them. But for the average person who's in a business environment already and wants to, level up and have that development experience, this feels like not too much. So I will agree with it. I totally am in agreement with that. But I just want to acknowledge there's a subset of people who this will be way too much money for. So
totally respect that. I totally respect that. In terms of options, though, I think that's like your best option, and we go cheap with it.
100%. Right? Yeah.
Now, there's one thing that I do want to cover with this, though, with that option that I think is a big wild card that a lot of people are like going, oh, I got an easier way to do this. I'm not going to spend $30 per user per month on my Copilot license. I'm going with the metered approach for using Copilot, which was the consumption model that was announced, the pay-as-you-go model that was announced I think like in February, maybe in March, but I think it was more like February.
Yeah, I would think it's February. Yeah, I was actually going to say January. So yes, it's been a little while.
Maybe, okay, yeah, in the last few months. And the gist with this is that they say it's 1 penny per message and for Copilot. And just keeping in mind that one prompt is not one message. One prompt is like when it goes to get do grounding data, getting grounding data from, they say from Microsoft Graph, but really from the semantic index, that is really pulling grounding data that costs like, I think at one point it was like 25 messages. So you can really have one prompt spend like 65 messages, right? And that's just one person running one prompt. So then you have to figure out how much is that going to end up costing. But some people look at that and go, it's dev. So I'm not going to have a lot of people doing it. I'm just doing dev. So that's got to be less than what I'm spending at $30 a month.
Yeah.
But there's a really, really, really big like curveball that's thrown at you for this. That curveball is when you get if you're only doing this as like one user account, all right, and you're trying to get away from doing the $30 per user per month Copilot license, here's the gotcha. The only way that Microsoft turns on the semantic index in your tenant is if you have at least one active Microsoft 365 Copilot license. Then it turns on the semantic index. So if you go with the consumption model and you have one account with the Business Essentials license and you set up the consumption model, if you're going to do any development with agents or you're going to do any usage with Copilot, you're not going to get any of that knowledge, which is the grounding data coming from semantic index. That's a big blind spot, especially if you're doing Copilot development. So in that case, you're going to have to buy one $30 per user per month Microsoft 365 Copilot license for that user. If you have lots of users, you only need one, and then you can go consumption on the rest of them, but that still pushes you into a 1-year commitment for both sides. So it kind of, to me, like the consumption model is only good for like tiny companies they don't want to license everybody for the Copilot license.
Yeah. No, absolutely a really good thing to point out, because that is, it's a fine thing if you're talking about a big organization who just wants to start dabbling and they just add one Copilot license and then they have a bunch of users and let's see how it goes. And, let's take this month to month, see how much we use it. The consumption model in that case makes a ton of sense. So I think having that consumption model option is a really great thing. But in our scenario here, where we're talking about a development environment, it's just, you pretty much just want to do the one license with the one Copilot yearly fee. I think that's just the best way to go.
Yeah, and it's funny because when this came out, when they announced this consumption model, and they did the blog post, and they had the table that showed all the features and everything. The article that went live in the damn table was incorrect on day one. And so when you're looking at this and you're going, wait a minute, you didn't say that when you talked about it, because I didn't know about this until about a month ago. I remember when like someone said this to me, and I'm going, no, you have to have at least one. And I'm like, wait, what? No, you do consumption model. The whole idea was for like development. And they're like, yeah, but you don't get knowledge. I'm like, but Copilot uses knowledge. No, it doesn't create the semantic index. I'm like, wait, what? Where is this documented? And they're like, well, it's not really documented and stuff. And they finally found where like somewhere was on there. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This was like nice little sneaky thing there.
I have one more thing to add. Just wanted to share something that I've been doing a lot. And so this is sort of a slightly outside of the development purview, but I do a lot of extensibility for Microsoft 365, and specifically with provisioning. Praxis is partnered with Orchestry. We do a lot of custom dev where provisioning sites is part of what we do, and you don't want to do that dev work in your production tenant. There's ways to do development for like web parts and stuff like that where you can do it in your production tenant by using site collection app catalogs, and there's lots of tricks, and I have blog posts about that. But from the idea of wanting to provision out sites and test that code and that workflow and whatever, that's tricky. And one of the things that was released about maybe a year and a half ago was the multi-tenant option. So it's a Microsoft 365 admin center setting where you can go into that setting and say that you want to create a multi-tenant organization. So you can you take one of the tenants as your main tenant, and then you can invite other tenants to be associated with that main tenant. And when you do that association, all of the people, you can set it up so that, and there's ways to do this in Azure Entra ID as well, but just this is a way to sort of start to link the Microsoft 365 part of it, not just the Azure part of it, not just the Entra ID part of it. Essentially, you can go in and say, oh, okay, this other tenant is a child of this tenant. And when what happens is when you sync the users, you can sync them in just one direction. So you can say every user or a subset of users in the main tenant should be synced into this other tenant. And then all of those accounts aren't guest accounts, they're member accounts, which is a big difference in the Microsoft 365 lingo space, right? So what you can do is go buy a tenant, buy one license of Business Premium or Business Essentials or whatever, and one Entra ID P1 license. So that you buy that one license, you also buy a Entra ID P1 license. That allows you to link your production tenant to that tenant that you just created. And then you can sync users down that are going to be testers, that are going to be developers, whatever they're going to be. They can be synced down, and then they can use that tenant, and you can have an Azure subscription pointing to that Entra ID to be able to do all your custom code and test all your custom stuff without having to do it in production. And so you can build sort of a CI/CD process around that where you're only then paying for that one license just to stand that tenant up. So I haven't looked into the Copilot piece of that or anything else, but I'm just talking about from having a place to test things that is not in your production tenant. That is another way to do that. So just another idea I wanted to share.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that. I saw you put it in our notes, and you saw like the multi-tenant thing, and I'm like, he's just buying a license. Like, is that it? So no, I learned something there. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I mean, that's what my recommendation is. It sounds like you and I are pretty much in alignment.
Yeah.
Maybe?
I think we are. At least this time.
Well, it's good.
We'll see what happens next time.
With the episodes. Episode 2, we've not disagreed yet. Episode 5, we're starting to disagree.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, that's pretty much the summary. If there's any news that comes out about that, you and I we'll definitely cover it on the show, because I mean that's big for sure. Microsoft 365 developers, and that's a big thing. So with that, do you have anything you'd like to add, or are we buttoning it up on this?
No, I think we're good. I think we're good. Should we do our final segment?
We are going to do our final segment.
All right.
So our final segment is picks. This was one of my most fun things that I used to do. I do this now in my newsletter as well. I do this in a couple different things. So it's not like we just take it straight back to the Microsoft Cloud Show, but we're doing picks. And this is where you pick something that is anything that you're interested in that you want to share. It could be a book you're reading, a show you're watching, a fun link, a geeky thing, something that's completely unrelated to tech. It doesn't matter. This is your wild card. This is where we add our personality to it, and you get to see a little bit of the person behind the shows. Julie,
you go first.
Oh my gosh!
No, you go
first. Okay, so I guess I go first.
You go first.
So mine is an article from Ars Technica that came out at the beginning of April. Ironically, it came out on April the 1st, but it's real. And it's called Starliner's Flight to the Space Station was far wilder than most of us thought. I said, if you're not familiar with what this is, Starliner was Boeing's crew capsule that was going to go to back and forth to the space station to shuttle astronauts back and forth. SpaceX has the Dragon capsule that does it, but that's it. Boeing is way behind, and they had issues with their capsule, and ultimately the two astronauts got to space, but they had to for a 2-day mission that they ended up coming home, I think 8 months later. This article is the first time they really share a lot about what happened, and it sounds like they were pretty close to being lost. It was really, really scary.
Oh my God.
Really, really close. So it's a longer article, but it's really interesting. So I found it like fascinating. At any rate,
Cool.
I will.
What an interesting.
Yeah.
What an interesting pick. That's, I think people very much, from the cloud show, from, the things that you share all the time, know, your things that you're into. The Legos behind you,
Lego.
Space. Oh, right.
You have
Lego
lots of
behind
You
you.
have
The
one Lego
Lego.
set or lots of Lego sets.
The Lego behind you.
No S. There's no plural.
You've corrected me like maybe 4 or 5 times on that. Your Lego, your space, you're into race cars, Formula One racing, all the things that you're into is super well known. I'm a lesser known entity in this. So I'm going to keep my segment at least every time. I am going to, make this personal by sharing what my passion is when I'm not sitting in front of the computer, which is cooking. I love cooking. I love everything about cooking. I watch cooking documentaries. I read books about cooking. I read cookbooks. I go to restaurants. I follow chefs. I cook. I make up my own recipes. I'm all about cooking all the time, to great delight of my husband, I'm sure. My first pick is going to actually, in this case, be a recipe that I created. I'm definitely eating healthier more these days, and I love a good soup for lunch. So I made up, using the ingredients that I had available to me, a creamy parsnip soup. And this has no cream in it. It's made creamy because of red lentils, which are super healthy, and add a creamy texture when they're cooked significantly enough. And so I made a creamy parsnip soup, so it's pureed. And then add some protein, add some fiber, and to make it extra delicious, I charred or sauteed until crispy some halloumi cheese with some pumpkin seeds and some smoked paprika to make like a topping. And so the link that you will have in your show notes will be to my recipe that I am sharing with you, so that you can also enjoy a creamy parsnip soup for lunch. So that is my share for this week.
That looks good.
Yeah, it is good. It is delicious.
I have a dumb
if
question.
I do say so myself, but
in a recipe, what is tea?
Oh, the lowercase t is teaspoon and an uppercase t is tablespoon. You're welcome. So I think that's all we have, right?
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm looking forward to it because now I get to learn. I get to learn something new instead of like seeing some other geeky thing that we always do. So I loved it when we did that before, but this is just different stuff. So I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, excellent.
Awesome. Well, we said that we were going to be our shows were going to be staying between like the 20 and 60 minute range. We've already blown that away on episode 2.
We blew that away.
But there was a lot. There was a lot to cover there. And
there was.
Like we said in episode 1, we're not going to cut the show off in case if there's stuff that we need to say about something. So
yeah,
that's that.
Absolutely. All right.
But what we're not going to do is keep dragging it out. So thank you very much for everybody for joining us today, and looking forward to episode 3.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, AC.
Bye, everybody. Did you like this episode? Please like and share it with your friends. We're on YouTube, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn. You'll find all the links in the video description below. And if you have a question, head over to our site at codedeploygo.live, where you can send it in. Also, sign up for our mailing list on our site at codedeploygo.live to learn about future episodes, opportunities for listeners, and get the show notes from each episode sent straight to your inbox. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.